Okay guys, hello and welcome back to day 58 of 100 days of code with me, Lily Code, and thanks so much for joining me. So yesterday we just made this cart.js component, and what we're going to do now is turn this into a modal. So let's get going. That's what we are at. We're going to make a pop-up modal that's an overlay for this. So I'll just put in my earphones so I can listen to Maximilian. And let's go. Cool. So just firing up the video here. It's just loading. Perfect. So we have it now. Perfect. So in our UI folder here, we are going to add a modal. Modal.js, and this is the modal that we're going to use. So we'll create a new file here and just call it modal.js. Cool. So modal.js. Perfect. And this should be a capital M to stick with the naming convention that we use in React and that we've been using in this project. So just keep it consistent, and then we will define our modal. So we'll also just create our SCSS file, or our CSS, sorry, we're not using SCSS, we're using CSS, which is just slightly different. So I said the wrong one there. So new file, and we'll just say module.module.css. Perfect. So now we have our CSS file, and let's go. So const modal. We'll accept props here. This is just a arrow function. We're taking in something, our props. And I've done this in the wrong file. This is in our CSS file. That's why it's not a syntax highlighting correctly there. So if we do that within our modal, we can see that that looks okay now. And then we'll export default modal. And we'll import those classes that we've just created in our modal file, in our module file, so we can apply styles with the use of this module.css file. So we'll say import classes from, so styles, classes, you can call it whatever you like, and we're going to get that from modal.module.css. Cool. And let's go. Yeah, so in order to use a modal, we use portals. So we can create a portal which places it on top of everything and doesn't interfere with the DOM. So that's how you create these modals in React. So the first thing we do is update our index file in order to tell it we want to put this modal here in the DOM, which is, you know, at the top, rather than in wherever we are actually rendering this component. We want to shift it out to the top of the DOM just to stop interference with other components. So where we have our root, we can add another one. So we'll add another div here, and the ID, we'll make the ID overlay, and then this is where we can port our modals to then. So it'll sit on top of the rest of the stuff. So we'll call this overlays and close that div. And now we can access this and send stuff to this point in the DOM, which is, you know, outside of everything else. So, or in line with everything else, rather than down in the component tree in the DOM where it would naturally just be, had we have just not sent it out here. So that's what we're doing here. So we're going to create some components in here. So we'll have our backdrop component, which receives props. And we also want our modal overlay, so we'll create another one here, which is const modal overlay. And again, we take in our props. This is just going to be an arrow function, like so. Cool. And in here we're going to say return and return a div in here. And we'll give this some class name, so we'll call this class name, add some classes that we can style this with, and it'll be classes.modal. And we'll add another div within this div. And we'll add another class name to this as well. And this will be classes.content. And then in here we'll pass in the props.children, which will be the actual content that we pass in when we use this modal. It'll display within the modal itself. So let's just add props.children in there. Children. Your girl don't know how to spell children. Cool. And for our backdrop here, we'll also just return a div. So return div. And this will have the class name of backdrop. So class name equals classes.backdrop. Perfect. That should be a small b when we're talking about a CSS class name. So perfect. Okay, so in order to do this, we are going to use fragment, which comes from React. So we'll import fragment from React, and then down here in our modal, we will return the fragment. So fragment, cool, and perfect. And then in here, let's also return our backdrop. And also our modal overlay. Modal overlay. Okay, so Max is saying that this approach is used if we are not using the Createportal method, which we are using Createportal, because that'll put it out in the right place for us in the DOM. So therefore, instead of returning them like this, we'll return to Jsx. To dynamic expressions that will call Createportal, which is built into React. So cool. So then we can import React DOM from React DOM, and we're going to use this in order to create our portal. So React, we don't need these, React DOM from React DOM. Perfect. And then let's use those, and I clearly have an extra curly bracket there. Cool. Cool. Okay, perfect. So then what we're going to do in here is use this React DOM to create a portal, and then we pass in where we want to create the portal. So it's with the backdrop component, or like which thing we want to create a portal to. So the backdrop. And then also in here we have React DOM.createPortal. And in here we're going to pass the modal overlay. Cool. Perfect. Cool. And rather than making this a self-closing tag, we'll just close it off with another closing tag, because we want to pass in the props.children inside this modal overlay. So our backdrop is just going to be our backdrop, our black wash that's going over the screen to stop interaction with the components behind, and then the modal overlay is what's going to contain the items in the overlay. So in here we pass in our props.children so we can see those things that we've passed in as props within our modal. So perfecto selecto. Cool. So yeah, so when you're using Createportal, you tell it what it is you want to create a portal for, and also where you want to create that portal. So the second argument that we're going to pass in is a portal, the element that we want to actually create this portal to. So we can just create a constant up here and call this portal element, which we can then refer to. And this is because we're going to use the same thing in both places. So just to keep the code a bit neater. So we'll say document get element by ID, and the ID that we want to pass in here, or where we want to show this portal, is the ID of overlays. So we have our overlays here, and then in our index.html we see that div with the ID of overlays. So this is where we want to create the backdrop portal to. Stick it in where that div with the ID of overlay is. So then we can pass this as our second argument to Createportal. Perfect. And we'll do the same for our modal overlay. Cool. So now we have our modal made. That's all we need to do with that modal. So what we'll do now is we'll go back to our app.js, and we can use this modal. It was not our app.js, it was in our cart.js. So in our cart.js, and rather than this being all wrapped in a div, we'll wrap this in a modal. Perfect. And then we just need to make sure that that's imported, which it has not just yet. So okay, so let's just do import modal, and there you go, from UI modal. Perfect. And we're still not triggering our cart firing when we click this button. So we also need to just hook that up to this button, but we'll do that now in a moment. Yeah. Cool. So we're going to implement this in order to see this actually working in our app.js file. So above the header here, we can just add in our cart. Yeah. Cool. And I'll self-close this for the moment, and then we will import cart. Yeah, cool. And save. Cannot find modal.js. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. Cart.js cannot find modal, does not, aha, so we imported it with a small m, it looks like there. So if I go back to modal, we've exported this as modal, cool. And then how did we import that into our app.js? Cart, cool. And how did we import that into our modal? Okay, so yes. So on our card. So let's just have a look. Why is there always so many files changed? So here in our cart, aha, there we go. Look, we have a small modal, and this needs to be a big modal because we don't have anything with the small m. So now this should be okay. Let's see what's going down around the town. So if we refresh, we still have a few errors. Modal, nothing was returned from render. This usually means a return statement is missing. Cool. So let's go to our modal component and just make sure we do it. Aha, so maybe I need my parentheses here because it's spanning a few lines. So let's add them in. That's looking better. Let's save. Let's reload. Perfect. Now we are returning something. Okay, great. And we should see our modal here. Check the render method of cart. Cart. So what about if I just add in a key as well? Because it seems like it needs a key. So the key can also be C1, the same as the ID. I'll add a comma. And the comma is in the wrong place. So I'll just add it outside there. And then unexpected token. Okay, let's reload. Cool. Okay. So that still didn't fix our error for aha. Okay, so it's in our list item that we need this ID. So where is our list item here? Item.id. Yeah, so here on this list item we can add a key, and this can be our item.id. And this should hopefully give those list items the ID that should be associated with them, and that error should go away. So great, look, our error has gone away. Here's our modal. Fantastic. Great, so we see it there. We have our buttons. Brilliant. That's great. Let's move on. We're going to trigger this at the correct time and things like that. We're not going to leave it like this, but we can see the buttons coming through, so that's great. Cool. Okay, so another thing that's obviously striking me here now is we don't have any styling on this modal, and Max has put in styling at some stage which I've missed. So I'm just going to come down to our modal and copy that modal styling just to see what does it look like with the recommended styling that he's added. So it was in our UI, we have our modal, here's our modal CSS, so I'll just copy all of this. This is just CSS that's telling the modal how to behave, and we should see a difference in our modal once we actually implement this now. So now we're back in our own project. I'll paste that in, I'll save, I'll close all of the files because we've got too many open. And now we just have our modal and our modal CSS, and now we can see, there we go, look. So we have our buttons, we have an actual modal, it's overlaying the page. The overlay is just giving it that black tint. So here we can see our overlay, it's position fixed. We want it to cover the whole screen, and we want it to be in front of the other items on the screen, and we just want it to be this black color that's slightly transparent, which is this here. And then we have some styling added to our actual modal to just make it look more like a modal. So perfect. And let's continue. So what's going on with the buttons as well? Where are we styling those buttons? So yeah, okay, cool, grand. So I'm going to just keep watching. And I'm also going to commit these changes because I can't see what I've changed currently because there's just so many there. So I'll just get these off the list so we can move on up, moving on up, moving on up. So I'm just listening to the video here while I'm committing. Okay, cool. Okay, perfect. So now in our app.js file, we are going to use state in order to track the state of our cart. So in here we will import use state. Well, first of all, we'll just start using it because then it will automatically import itself. So it needs to be within the function declaration of the component itself. We use the hooks inside the component that we're describing. So in this case it's the app component, so it should be within that function. And then we're just going to say const cart is shown. So this is going to be a boolean to say whether or not the cart is shown, and then set cart is shown in order to update this boolean. So there we go, and then we'll equal this to use state and pass in our parentheses and pass it an initial value of false. So initially the cart is not shown. Perfect. And then we're going to use that. Okay, so we're going to create a handler to handle whether or not this cart should be shown. So we'll say const show cart handler, and this is just going to be an arrow function. And then in here we're going to set cart is shown to true. So upon running this handler, we will change the cart display to on or off, and we want it to be true. So then we'll have another one here, const hide cart handler, and here we'll set it to false. Ay, 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 ya, mamma mia. Holy cannoli. So we'll come back here into our, where was we? Oh yeah, app. Oh, I just pasted in a whole load of CSS. That's what happened. Okay, so we'll say hide cart handler here. And this is going to be another arrow function, and you guessed it, it's just going to do the opposite, which is set that set as cart, or the is cart. Cart is shown. Set the cart is shown variable to false. So it does the opposite. This switches it on, and this one is going to switch it off to show or hide it. So this will be false here. So perfect. Cool. Cool. So in here now we're going to add a Jsx expression, and in here we'll say if cart is shown, if this is positive, if it's truthy. So if cart is shown, then display the cart. And then in the header we're going to include the onShow cart and run this show cart handler. So this is how we will switch on and off the cart, show cart handler. Cool. Or this is just how we will switch it on, I should say. We don't have the switch off yet. So we've added this to the header component here. So now we're going to go to the header component and configure this. So header is within layout, header. Perfect. And then on this button, this is where we're going to want to trigger that. So we'll say on click. And we'll do props on show cart. Okay, so now in the header cart button we want to actually handle this on click method that we've just described ourselves. We could have called this anything, but it is going to be on a click, so that's why we chose to use on click here. And then if we go to the header cart button, we can actually manage that. So then on this button we want to say on click, and we'll pass in props dot on click. So all we're doing here is passing down a pointer from the app.js. So we have this onShowCart handler. And what we want to do is pass that information on click to onShowCart in the header cart button. And then in the header cart button, we want to pass the props that we've passed through access the onClick. So we're just sort of passing the data around. Yeah, so where we have like multiple different levels of passing around something here, you could use Uncontext. That's a good use case for when you're doing something like this, when you're passing something to many different components or around the place. So we could use that, but for now we've chosen this method. We're not passing through too many components, so it should be okay. Okay, so let's keep on going and see where we are at. Okay, so excuse-moi, sorry about this, guys. Oh, my microphone. Hope you could hear me. Let's continue. Okay, so yeah, we were saying that we could use Usecontext for passing the data around, which we're not going to do here because this is actually okay. We're only passing it down 2 levels. But in saying that, we will use Usecontext further on in a little while, but for a different application. So we will be doing that, just not right here. We'll just keep the chain of props doing the prop drilling because that approach is actually okay in this instance. Yeah. So now obviously we just want to hook up this close button so that when we click it, our pop-up here will actually close. So that's what we're going to do next. So in our cart here, in our actual cart, we can add an Unclosed Prop and tell it what to do on close. So we'll set that up. So here we will run the hide cart handler, because this is what closes the cart. So the first thing we'll do is in the cart, we will actually add a button. So in the cart here in the close, we'll add something to run when we actually click this close. So we'll say on click and say props dot on close. So the reason why we're using on close here is because that's the name of the function that we just defined in our app.js, wasn't it? Yes. So here we're saying on close, run the hide cart handler, which is set is cart shown to false. And then this is being linked to our cart itself, and we're saying on click we want to run this on close that's coming through the props, which is going to run the handler. So great. So now if we press close, let's open up our dev tools, and I will just also, so this is on close, props on close, yeah. So, and this is the same as this. Yup. So what I'll just also do as well is make it closable when we click the background, and then I'll see if that works and then worry about what's going on here. So in the modal component, we can add an on-click to this backdrop here, to this div. So we'll add an on-click here, which will tell us what to do when we click this. And we'll forward through the value. So we'll say props.onClose. And then we can actually use this and say in the backdrop, we want to do our unclosed that we've just defined, and then what we will do is do props unclose. So we're just passing this information around, props.unclose. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, so we just also need to add that then to the modal itself. So we're in the cart component where we're using this modal, we need to add this unclose here. So unclose, this is going to be equal to props.unclose. And if we save that now, okay, so that is not closing anywhere. And this doesn't look like it's highlighted correctly. So from our modal, we have our backdrop has props on close, which should be on click, it should run on close. So okay, so I'm just gonna go back for a moment because maybe I did that all a bit quick. So in our header, we have our props. Okay. Click, yep. Okay. So in our cart we have our unclose, which we have passed our hide cart handler. Okay. So then on our close button in the cart, we can run this on close. Yes, so on close we receive the hide cart handler. So then on click, yes, on click, we pass through this on close, yeah, because we just created that. So okay. So I don't think I should have this here. I should have it on the button. So we'll just say, let me undo that. Reload. Why are you so slow? Okay. Alrighty then. And then in our backdrop, so in our modal, we have our backdrop defined here, which accepts in our props. It's defining this div, which is just our backdrop, and we have on click of this, we want to run on close. Okay, which is coming from our close handler. Yep. Okay, so we do want the unclosed prop on the modal as well, on close, and this is going to be props on close. So now we should be able to open and close the cart. Why? Let's go and add some console logs into our click handler so that when we click that, something happens. So back in our modal, okay, so in our cart, is it, where do we have those functions defined that are saying on close, on handle? So here we go in our app.js. So here we have our state being tracked to check whether the cart is shown or not. So let me just console log out some things when we're closing this cart here. So I'll close and say console log closed. And perhaps add in the cart is shown boolean to see what it's being set to, if it's changing. And I'll also just add in the number 1 and put this below as well. So we'll do a 1 and then a 2. And I'll do the same thing in our I'll do the same thing in our open. So this is 2. And then I'll do the same thing in our show cart handler so that we can just see that these are actually running, that it's coming in here, because then we can whittle down what's going on. So 2, and this is going to be cart is shown as well, and it should be set from false to true here. So, and this is our show cart handler, and the other one is our hide cart handler. Cool. So this is open, show, show, and show. Okay, so let's save and have a look at this now that we have a few console logs in there. Okay, so nothing is happening, it seems. How's our terminal doing? Do we have any errors? Because we don't have anything in our... No. Okay, so I'm going to just stop and start my project again. Just, it's always a good check as well. You'd be surprised how this can fix things. And I'll just get rid of this for the moment. And we'll figure this out. So let's see. Okay. And I'll just get rid of these other ones as well for the time being. So, something is wrong. What is wrong? Right, so we're going to do some digging and find out why this is not triggering something on click. Because that's what's happening. We don't get anything in the console. It doesn't look like we're triggering something to me. So we'll figure this out. Yep. Oh my god, I just figured it out. So... I was adding my changes there to the wrong file. We are running number 1 starting project. I was adding these changes to number 7. So I'll just pause, port them over and see where we're at then. So that's what I'll do to save you the time of going over that again, and let's see where we're at as soon as I do that. Okay guys, so I went off on my microphone. Okay guys, so I went off and I did some digging, and what I found was that when I spun up, so I tried to move the code into the correct 01 folder. I also went through, made sure everything was there. It seems to be. Then I finally had the idea to spin up Max's number 7 project, and in his number 7 project the modal does not close. That's where we're at. And then in number 8 the modal does close. So I feel like we still need to progress a little bit more. There might be something small missing that I haven't seen yet, and my brain isn't filling in the gaps for me here. From what I can see, we should really have everything there. So, you know, I'm going to continue, because I think actually in continuing we will get our answer. So that's good to know, you know. Did some research, found some avenues, and let's go down those avenues. Okay. So we'll just see what's going on here. I'm just watching Max's video. So at the end of his video, his cart is closing and opening, but that doesn't match what I'm seeing. So we're keeping on going here. So now we're going to implement Usecontext in order to add items to the cart, and hopefully by continuing to look at the cart here, it will all come together. That's what I do believe, 100%. So or just the okay, just one of them. Okay. Cool. So we're going to create a store component, and we're going to do this in order to use Usecontext. So, I mean, I have my code running here. Do you know what? I'll just open up just 01 here, because open folder. You know, we got a lot going on, baby girl. So we'll make the changes in just the 01 folder to reduce anything like that happening again. And then here within my main project folder, I'm going to create a store folder, because we're going to add a store for using Usecontext. Okay, perfect. So within our store here, we're going to create a new file, and this is going to be called cartcontext.js. Perfect. And then we just set this up as always. So we have our import React from React. Well, actually for a Usecontext, it's slightly different. So we'll have a look at that configuration now from React, add our semicolon, and then we just say that we want to create a context. So React create context, and then we pass in an object, and what we want to pass in is our items array, an amount of 0 initially, and then a function which will allow us to update this. So we'll have our add item function, which will take an item and perform a function on it. And excuse me, we'll also have a remove item function that can be called here. So remove item, and again the same item, perform some function on it. The function is going to be to remove the item, but we'll worry about that in a moment. And then we'll export default. Export default. Okay, so this actually needs to be equal to a component, and we can add our semicolon here. So we need something to import, so we must assign this to something. So we'll say constant cart context is equal to React create context. We have this object being passed in that we can then use, and then we export our cart context as well. So super duper. And I'll just add these changes, because what does be going on with all the changes that get added? Okay, cool. And what we're also going to do now is create a cart provider. So we could just add this to the same file, but I'll create a second file first just to keep things, you know, separation of concerns. To keep the separation of concerns there. So we'll say cart provider. Yeah, yesterday I just had to step away for a while, you know, and then come back and try and figure it out. Sometimes you need to do that, and that's totally okay. So just go and take a break. I went for a walk and git push. So then we just wanted to create this particular component to manage the cart context data and to provide that data then. So this should not be in a square bracket here. This is where putting in a JSX statement here, so it should be within the curly brackets. And then we'll just also export default cart context provider. So cart provider. Cool. And then we just also want to provide the props, or the cart context, sorry. So we'll create a constant here called cart context, and this is going to be equal to an object that's going to accept in that data. So we have our items, which is just an empty array, our amount, which we're initializing at 0, and our add item and remove item function. So add item and remove item. And what we will name these in this particular component is our add item to add item cart handler and our remove item cart handler. So remove item cart handler. Cool. So then we just also want to create the constant functions that are actually going to be these handlers that we have defined. So we'll create this just above here. So we just define a constant, pass in this name, we're defining this thing now. This is going to be a add item cart handler, so we'll pass in our item because we will need that in order to do something with it. It's going to be an arrow function, and for the time being we can leave it like this, and then we'll do the same for our remove item cart handler. Perfect. We're just getting all the bits in place here now, and when we want to remove an item from the cart handler, rather than passing in the item, we can just pass through the ID, because the item with that ID is the thing that we're going to want to remove. And then down here in our cart context provider, we can pass in a property of value, and this value is going to be our cart context, which just means that we're providing this to components that use this cart context provider. We're providing all of these items because we're passing those through as the value. So perfecto selecto. So everywhere that's going to need access to this cart context provider is all included in the app.js. And that's because in the cart we're going to need to pass in the information of the items. In the header we have the button that's showing, displaying the number of items in the cart. In the button, where is it? Here we go. So we have this button that knows how many items are in the cart, so that needs access to the amount in the cart provider. And then we also have in our app.js the meals, which we need to be able to hook up and add meals to the cart, pass over that data, use the provider. That's how this is all tying together. So don't know what that was, but I enjoyed it anyway. So perfect. So we will literally just wrap all of this app.js in the cart provider. Like so, to provide all of that information to all of these inbuilt pieces here. And then I just realised here, looking at this, that there's actually some stuff missing here. Did I not fully update this from the last lecture? You know, I was all over the place. Realised then that the code didn't show in the right place, so I'll just add this in, and I can make sure now before the next video, because it seems to be popping up there, but I'll just add this in. So we have our cart, then here we have our unclosed method, which is the hide cart handler function being run. So hide cart handler, and if we go to our cart, we'll see this function, so that's what we want to run. And then we need to close off our curly parentheses there for our Jsx expression. And then in the header we also have on show cart. And this is going to be equal to our show cart handler. So cool. Handler. And that's about it. Cool. Perfecto. See, I was wondering about this, so cart. I was wondering why some of it wasn't syntax highlighting and other bits were yesterday, which clearly really says that there's some sort of an issue. But I didn't know why it wasn't working, so... Okay. So one of the first things we'll do here is we'll use context in order to update this badge with the amount of items that are actually in the cart. So that's what we'll do. So the first thing we'll do is import Usecontext, because we're going to use Usecontext in here in order to do this. So we will import Usecontext. Yep, from React, perfecto, selecto. And then in our header cart button, we're going to use this, yep. And I also need to import the cart context. So import, perfect, yep. And you can see here that the cart context goes up a level into the store, into the cart context. So from here, where we are, if we go up a level, we'd be out here. If we go up another level, we'd be out here. So then from here, we go into store and into cart context. So that's what's going on there, you know. And that's all good. So we will continue. So now we can actually use context and pass the cart context. Use context. And I'll store this in an object. So I'll say const cart context equals Usecontext cart context. And now that we have this, we can use this to output the number of items in our cart. So I'll just add another constant. And number of cart items, we can call this number of cart items. And we'll do cart context dot items dot length. So we could do it like that, but another way we want to do it is, say if we have 3 pieces of the same piece of food. So if we've ordered 3 schnitzels, if we've ordered 3 schnitzels, then we want to include that as one item, but 3 of those items. So we don't actually want to do, excuse me, cart items dot length. So instead we want to set the amount instead. Do you know what I mean? So if we have 3 of one item, it doesn't count as 3 separate items when you're looking at the badge, as a normal cart would work. So instead what we'll do, we'll instead use reduce. And what reduce allows us to do is transform an array of values into a single value. So first of all, we pass it a function, and then we pass it the starting value as well. So we'll start it at 0. So first of all, we pass in the current number and the item. Okay. Okay, so we will return, so we will return the current item, current number, plus the item dot amount. That is spelled correctly, okay. And okay, so then we can actually use this number of card items, which is doing a reduce on the amount of items that we actually have. And this is just going to reduce those items down to a single digit. And we can pass this into, this has been done in the wrong component. So yeah, this should obviously be done in our, where we have that button. So in our header cart button here, this is where we need all this code. So here we go. I just did it in the wrong place by accident, so I'll tab this in, just keep it all visually as expected. We've imported our use context and our cart context in here, and then down here we can use this value and we use it like so, just stick it in a Jsx statement. So there you go. And and then if we save that and come back and take a look at our page, mamma mia. Okay, so should we have 3 items in our cart? Doubt it. Okay. Okay, so yes, so basically this number now should be interpolated out from here. So let me just check my terminal, new terminal. I'll stop this, which should be the same code running. That should have been exactly what we were looking at, but I'll just do npm start to be sure. Let's do it in here. Let's spin this one up and just check what goes on with this cart. And sure, if we're, if we're missing something, we will continue this next time because we've hit the hour. And yeah, that's about it really. So let's have a look. Fingers crossed. Fingers and toes are crossed today. Got to find out what's going astray. Okay, cool. So we do have some errors. Great. Okay, so in app.js, which is good because we can figure our way out of this. What is it that we need to finish, you know? So yes, so we do not have cart context fragment or use context being used in here. We'll just get rid of them. I'll save, and then it's also giving out about our cart is shown and our hide cart handler, because I clearly didn't bring over all of that code properly. So that's okay, we can do that, you know. And then we have item and ID is not provided in our cart provider.js. So I just think we haven't properly linked up something. Cart is shown is not defined. App.js line 9. Okay, yeah, and that, yeah. So I will add these back in. I'll just add them back in properly, you know, and make sure that the corresponding functions are there, because I just added them in a bit higgledy-piggledy there. I thought I had, you know, definitely updated this code, but then I was stashing things, I was checking things out, so I'm not really sure. And then item is not defined and ID is not defined in our cart provider. Okay, so I'm going to pick up next lesson and solve these issues together with you guys. So look, I hope you have an absolutely fabulous day. Thank you so much for joining me, Lily Code, on my channel for another day of 100 days of code. And do stay tuned for more informational tutorial style videos. If you do like the content, please do like and subscribe. It means the world to me, and it means more people can see these videos. Thanks so much, guys. Love you all. Appreciate you being here with me, and just have a fabulous day. Thank you.